What's up, guys? What I'm doing today is I'm going to show you some general maintenance on this bike right here. This is a 1998 Harley Davidson xl1200c. It's the 95th anniversary edition. They only made 3,000 of these. This one is number 1289. The basic maintenance we're going to do today is I am going to show you how to do a simple oil change and spark plug change. I always change my plugs whenever I change my oil, but before we can get into changing that oil, the first thing we got to do is go for a ride and let everything warm up. There's a reason why you always want to warm your oil up and get your engine warm when you change your oil. The reason being is because the oil, it gets thinner when it's warm and hot, where when it gets colder it's always thicker. So the principle behind it is that as you warm up your oil, it'll thin out, and then when we go and drain our oil, it'll be thinner, and everything that's in the little crevice and creases and all the little nooks and crannies will help come out of your drain easier. So now that I got my engine warmed up, we will pull this into the back of the house and show you what the next step is. You done? You done? I'm not playing fetch right now. Sorry. So guys, we got a box of goodies here. One thing you're going to need, some oil. I use a 20W50 in this motorcycle. Is he not done? I use 20W50. You'll need 3 quarts of that. You'll also need the correct oil filter. I'm just using Harley Davidson stuff here because that's just what I like to use. Some people use different oils, but that's just what I'm using. This is about the maintenance, not about your choice of oil. And you'll need an oil filter. I chose a chrome one just because I already have a chrome one on there. And you will also need these should already be pre-gapped, and they're not. Usually when I would buy these in Minnesota, they were always pre-gapped. So we've got that. We are going to need a couple tools here. So you will want a spark plug socket and a socket wrench to go with your socket. I will need a little flathead screwdriver. I will need a container to put my oil in. Probably some old dirty shop rags just in case I make a mess. On the non-exhaust side, that's the hose you're going to want to see. And there is a little thing here that will unscrew. It's just a little clamp, and your oil is going to come out of this hose. We're going to take our flathead screwdriver. I'm just going to unscrew this clamp and bring this little bracket back. So I've slid that little bracket back. You can see there's a lot of dirt there. That's where these old shop rags come in handy. So I'm going to get this underneath here, and we are going to pull off this hose, and our oil should drain right out, and there it goes. So we're just going to let that oil drain out right there out of that hose until it's just completely empty and nothing else is draining out of it. And while that's doing that, we will take the oil filter off. I usually want to wait until this starts to drip just so I have less oil in my filter in case anything's still draining out of that. There is a thing that people do here when they're removing their oil filter. Some people will cut out a piece of cardboard that will slide in between this oil filter here and the bottom. That does help. That actually does work. We can do that, but me, I'm kind of old school. I'll just take an old rag most of the time and tuck it up in there. I'll take a few of them and I'll just tuck them up in there as much as I can, and that usually works for me. I'll take another one and tuck it up in there. If you can't turn this by hand and start to do it like me, oh yeah, I'm not quite that strong, so we will grab one of these things and we will leverage it right in here about like that. Give it a little bit of a squeeze and turn to the left just to break this off. It has some little knobs on it. I used to get the oil filters in Minnesota that had a little socket right here on the end that was the same size as my spark plug. This here, you can see I'm actually kind of denting it, getting this thing off. And when I finally got it to hand loose now, let me pull this peg down. Now once I do this, there's going to be some oil that comes out, so I'm going to try and turn this up towards me. Look, you can see already coming out on the chrome there. Trying to do as fast as I can, pull it up, and I've got oil all over the ground. That's why we got all these old rags. Now, oil leak on the concrete. Oil leak on the concrete. Oh my gosh, into the water. And next thing I'm going to do is grab my new oil filter. Should take some clean oil. We'll grab us some clean oil here. And I have in the past taken these and put a little oil inside, but I'm not going to do that this time. I'm just going to put a little clean oil right there on that lip. Looks like I'm still dripping slowly, so I'm just going to let that sit for a second here. Close this up. And I think that's good enough. And then when we put this on here, you might want to line it up. Hold it with one hand. I recommend using two hands. Line it up, kind of turn it to the left until you feel it, you know. And then you'll know, just don't cross thread anything. I'm just going to hand tighten it. And that's all you really need to do, is hand tighten it. And I'm just going to give it a squeeze. I don't want to go too hard, but that's enough to hold at least, you know, 20 pounds of pressure, 40 pounds, 60 pounds. It's got a pretty soft gasket on this edge. And I'll sit here and I'll clean up. And I got my new oil filter. I'm just going to take this hose clamp here. I'm going to put it back on that plug. I'm going to put this little clamp over there. And I'm going to tighten this clamp on this hose. So I'm going to fill this up with 3 quarts of oil. There's one. Let's do the second quart of oil. And I'm not going to check the level after I put this in here, because we have to remember nothing is being pumped through right now. Nothing has been pumped through. So it's still got that extra oil to fill up. So we've got our oil change. Next thing we're going to do, change out our spark plugs. I like to take an air hose and blow all this stuff out before I remove these plugs, just in case there's any dust, dirt, sand, anything in there that might get down inside my engine. So let's go ahead and grab that air compressor. You know what, guys? I thought I could pull the big air compressor out, but I thought some of you might not have an air compressor at home. So if you don't have an air compressor, you can use this electronics, like one of these, you know, dusters for your keyboards or whatever. And you can kind of use that. Next step after that is we're going to want to take these plug wires off, and we will want to pinch at the bottom and kind of wiggle our way up until it comes out. Pinch at the bottom and the middle, wiggle your way out. You never just want to grab a plug and pull on it like that. And then after we have that, we'll take our socket wrench and we will get these out of here. I just loosen that one up. I'm going to put this one in here and just loosen it up. And we will back these off. I'm not going to take these all the way out just yet, because when I do take these out, I'm going to want to replace it with the new plug that's already been gapped, and I don't leave this sitting open. So let's see if we have a 0.40. We do have a 0.40 on our plug wire, and we have our new plug here on our gapper tool. So I'm going to grab my gapper tool here. It's nice to have a new gapper tool. And we're going to look for the 0.040. You can see we have different sizes. This is the gap we're wanting for this plug. Maybe these plugs are pre-gapped. We don't know. But this is the gap we want. We're going to check that, and I can feel a little bit of giveaway in that. That should be 100%. So if this is truly, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this little bender here, push on this slightly, just barely. I'm going to re-grab my wire. Now we're going to do our other one. That feels good. Check this one again. That feels good. So I know both of these are identical at 0.40. You'll want to notice that we have a little crush washer on here, and you will feel that. So I'm going to go ahead and take one of these out. You want to make sure you don't cross thread this. It should just screw in by the end of this all the way until you feel it want to stop all the way to the base when it touches that washer. So I'm going to go ahead and take this one here. I'll pull this out. Make sure I don't cross thread. And we're just going to screw this down into here until it gets finger tight. Next thing we're going to want to do is tighten these down. Make sure our thing's going the right way. Some people will use a torque wrench and they will torque these down to spec, but these have crush washers. If you're comfortable with it, you can do it by hand, but just know you don't want to strip one of these things out. I recommend using a torque wrench. I have one over there, but I've done this a long time. You can look up the specs on that. But basically, we're going to take this, and you'll notice when I do use this wrench, I'm not holding it out here on the end. I'm holding it up here on the end, so I can actually feel that washer crush as I turn this in and tighten it up. And when I feel like it wants to give me, after that little washer crushes and it wants to stop, like I can feel it now, getting where it's just getting tight, and that's good for me. I'm going to do the same thing on this side. Get that on there. Feel it start to hit that washer. I'm just going to turn it bit by bit. I'll feel that washer kind of squish down. Still squishing down. Still squishing a little bit. Okay, now it's starting to tighten up. And I feel it snug down until it's getting tighter. Good enough. Next thing after that, I'm just going to go ahead and reconnect my plugs. I'm grabbing it by the top here on this rubber part, and I'm just pushing it down. You will hear it snap and click. Let's see if we can get that. There, you see that snap and click. And then we're done. Now next thing to do is start it up. We're going to give it a start. Oil light's on, but there it goes. It just turned off. That means it knows it's getting oil in there. We're just going to let that idle at a low pace for a second. And that's it, guys. So after you've let her idle for a minute, take her for a ride, let her warm up, come back, check your oil level, make sure you're okay, and you should be good to go. And like I always say, it's okay to try and fail, but never fail to try. Fam out.